Look at these CEOs. Some of the world's most powerful people shaking hands during Trump's inauguration. But they weren't just there for the photo ops. They had a calculated plan months before anyone else knew what was coming.
The economic fallout from President Trump's tariffs has heightened concerns of a recession and a global trade war.
For you and I, a trade war is a bet on our economy, our job, and our future. For a select few, it's opportunity. But wait, hold on. These CEOs run global companies with factories and supply chains worldwide. Wouldn't tariffs hurt them the most? Well, there's a way around that. In fact, any company can request tariff exemptions, but in reality, without the right connections, yeah, you're kind of f***ed. Because after spending hours diving into the data and talking to experts, one thing is clear. The elites know that connections, not competition, are how they keep winning while others get crushed. So it made me think, because is the best path to success to play in this gray area, the art of bending rules without breaking them? It's something that I've been thinking a lot about on my own road to success. So in this video, I'll show you who's winning, how they're doing it, and if this can ever change. Because for the well-connected, rules aren't obstacles, they're opportunities to win. So if that's true, what can you and I learn from this?
The golden age of America begins right now.
So to find out who really wins a trade war, there was one expert that I had to talk to. Lauren Cohen is a Harvard Business School professor who follows one thing: where the money goes. And what he found looking at who was getting tariff exemptions is that merit might just be a myth.
So my colleagues and I, we have done a kind of deep data analysis that has provided some really counterintuitive, but I think centrally important findings up to this point. So there are two kind of out of sample tests. You have one firm that just does trading, but they trade with just foreign countries and other firms here. And then you have other firms that say, what we do as a good or a service, that's really valued by the government. Now it turns out that your trading partner, the government, is saying, we're going to put tariffs on these goods. You're not going to be able to trade with this country anymore. These firms that had that relationship with the government, they seemed to be especially good at actually finding ways around these tariffs. And they seem to be especially good at benefiting exactly when other firms are getting hurt by this.
And the perfect example of this is Honeywell, a company that builds technology for airplanes, factories, defense gear for the government. And 40% of their revenue relied on foreign buyers, so if Honeywell couldn't sell to them at their normal rates, they would be screwed during a trade war. Yet, it magically won waivers on 24% of its requests, twice the average. And so while their competition was getting denied, they were winning big.
You go to any firm, any pizza shop down the street and say, hey, you're going to sell 40% less. These are not small things. These are life and death. Honeywell, they didn't just not get hurt by this, but times were booming. If you can do well exactly when the other competitors are doing poorly, that's a massive advantage.
Tariffs have now raised up to 245% against China. Is this about to be a frenzy in terms of separation between companies that are politically connected versus not?
This is like third graders on the playground.
It's like the global superpower version of my dad can beat up your dad.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's like, come on. They may be thinking, now is our time, right? Now we get a bigger benefit from having this close relationship.
So if you're well connected, you don't just dodge tariffs, you can turn them into a payday. I know what you're thinking, because sure, a lesser known company like Honeywell, of course that they can get away with it. But there's no way that these guys who run the biggest companies in the world can get away with the same thing. I mean, think about it. If you're watching this video, you're using at least two of these guys' products. But let me assure you, because at least one of these guys will definitely be getting away with it, and they already are. Because nobody can play the game better than this one guy. No, not Elon. Bro is way too awkward to be able to pull this off. This guy. If Steve Jobs was Apple's product genius, Tim Cook is his political mastermind. Because who else can play both the US and China at the same time? Who else can pledge to invest $500 billion in the US to create jobs and facilities, at the same time regularly travel to China, open new research centers, and signal his commitment to strengthen their relationship? It's exactly how Tim Cook landed 10 tariff waivers in the trade war in 2019. And just as we've already seen in 2025, smartphones are one of the few things that are being spared in the 245% tariffs against China. So whether you're a lower profile company like Honeywell or a giant like Apple, the rule of power you need to understand is simple. Know the right people and the rules stop applying to you. That's how connections beat competitiveness every single time. So now you know who wins, but next, let's break down exactly how the game is played.
There are many other CEOs who say they won't even meet with President Trump, but you engage with the White House regularly.
Just because you know the right person doesn't qualify you for automatic protection. The more powerful you are, the more favors you need to trade. And why the hell would anyone risk bad press for you unless it pays off for them? So to lock in guarantees, there's 3 ways to do it. And it's all about turning money in relationships into shields. The first one is something that we've all heard about, but never really understood how it worked. We just all knew that companies weren't just writing checks because they really share said candidates' values like diversity, integrity, and all that. And the best way to show it is if you take a look at this. What it shows here is tariff exemption requests from 2018 to 2020. I literally left my corporate job so I never had to look at a fucking Excel sheet again, but look, this is that important. And here's 3 things that show you how political donations aren't just donations. First, timing matters a lot. Companies that filed exemption requests early got approved way more than those who were late. As the trade war continued and lobbyists flooded in, and so did the bad press, approvals tanked. And the second and third go hand in hand. A select few companies like Apple were crazy successful in getting exemptions. But third and most importantly, some were so successful that they received 100% approval on the same items that other firms would have 0% success in. So what made all the difference? A March 2025 report found that the top 50 corporate donors received over half of all exemptions. So moving early isn't just filing paperwork early. Moving early is shaking hands at the inauguration and making political donations. But what matters is giving that to the right person too. Companies who donated to the ruling party, Republicans in Trump's case, were twice as likely to win waivers. But if you donate to the Democrats, you are far more likely to get rejected. But if I have to assume, I don't think this is just like a one-sided Republican thing. So I asked Lauren.
Based on your research, right, you saw in Trump's China tariffs in 2018, but then also Biden's Russian sanctions. Is it fair to say that these sorts of things are bipartisan?
Yes. That's 100% fair. In that sense, that government tie, that exists across time and across administrations. And it seems to just be getting stronger.
And I looked into it, and it's true. Because even under Biden's Russia sanctions, well-connected firms still receive waivers to import Russian fertilizer and rare earths. And so donations and favors aren't a one-party thing. Both do the same. It's exactly why political donations aren't charity, they're insurance. And just like any policy, you have to pick the one that pays the most when crisis hits. And as soon as you see the odds changing, you shift your support, just like all these guys did. So it brings you to an important rule that you have to understand. Support the right rule makers at the right timing, and the rules will bend in your favor. But just be careful, because if you push too hard, you're walking the line of being a leech. And the next tactic walks a similar line that's in the gray zone, the line between legality and corruption. But what if you let someone else bend the rules for you? Because there's a whole industry where elites quietly pay to bend the rules. And if they can pay to bend the rules, you deserve a bed that bends to you. Look. I'm not just saying this. I've really started taking my sleep seriously this year. And this is why I'm genuinely glad to be sponsored by Helix, since they've helped fix a problem that I've struggled with forever. So how it works is I took their quick sleep quiz where I asked about sleep position, body type, and most importantly, how hot I run at night. And I was matched with the Twilight Lux. And as you saw, the best part is that Helix delivers your mattress right to your door, rolled up in a box, so I could set it up all by myself. And I've been sleeping on it for about like a month or so now, and guys, it blows away my old mattress. Before Helix, I'd wake up with lower back pain and waking up sweating. I mean, it's hot here in Texas. But since switching, I actually wake up feeling rested, even if it's early morning and I have to go work out or something. But I think the best proof is how I've had way more energy to do this. And you can tell, like, look at how much more consistently I've been uploading now compared to before. So I think you and I both know how important sleep is, but I don't think you can really understand it until you feel the difference. Look, I'm always skeptical about big purchases like this, but with free shipping in the US and with a 100-night sleep trial, so a full 3 months to make sure you love it, it was a no-brainer. And even after a few nights, I was already sold. So go to my link in the description, helixsleep.com/gen, and get 27% off, plus a free bedding bundle with any Luxor Elite mattress that you purchase. And now, back to how the game is played. So this next one may not even be a gray area, because when you can hire someone who can whisper to the very official stamping yes or no on your waiver, that's gotta be corruption, right? Because waiver approvals aren't handled by an algorithm. They come from a 5 to 7 person exclusion desk. Think like a DMV counter for tariffs. Because in fact, if it was AI that was running the show, there wouldn't be a record-breaking boom in lobbying that we see in every single trade war. Okay, so what's going on? So what happens is that lobbyists are hired to create detailed petitions on why their client's product deserves an exclusion. And they stack reasons like how no other US supplier exists, it's critical to hospitals, or it will kill American jobs. And sometimes that write-up from a good lobbyist can be enough, but what separates the good from the best lobbyists is, again, who do they know? Take Varian Medical Systems, a US medical equipment company. They hired a lobbying firm run by a former Trump campaign official, and within weeks, he was able to arrange meetings with some of the top trade advisors that can pull some strings. And just like that, 4 out of Varian's requests were approved, leading to a $23 million boost in revenue. It's exactly how securing a waiver became a golden ticket in corporate America, worth millions not just for the company, but for the lobbyists. Because it's a whole lot safer to hire that middleman than risk bribery charges yourself. So a good takeaway is that when you want something done, the fastest path isn't always straight to the gatekeeper, it's through the person who knows them well. But what if you can cut out this middleman and, better yet, put the gatekeeper on your payroll? Because if you can bring someone even more connected on your team, doors will never close no matter how the rules change. That's why this third way in how the game is played may be the most powerful of all. Because why hire a lobbyist when you can hire the regulator?
Here's one strong mechanism we found, and that is that they, by a factor of 2 or 3, so 200 or 300%, are much more likely to get exempt from these policies. We found that one way they were able to do that is to hire former government officials on their payrolls. So these are people that used to work for the Department of Defense. And you can imagine how this works. Hey, I used to work at the Department of Defense for 20 years. I still have lots of contacts there and friends. So when we really need something done, I give them a call and I say, can you see our contract through? We've been doing business with you for a while. You know, we worked together. We went to our children's barbecues together. I mean, come on. And that is the kind of revolving door we're talking about here. This seems to be a growingly important part of creating firm value. When there's a lot of uncertainty and all the firms are kind of holding up their hands saying, we don't know what happens next. This is one hedge against that uncertainty.
So this is very interesting because I recently did an episode investigating congressional stock trading. So this is like a tangible example of why Congress is essentially getting hired by the same companies that they may have usually regulated.
This is the challenge of any social scientist, is that if those kinds of interactions are happening, they're not happening in a way we can measure. What's really cool about this data is that we actually scraped all the background data from LinkedIn. So these people are putting on their website, yes, I used to work for the State Department for 20 years. I now work for Honeywell.
So what kind of positions are they like occupying specifically?
They tend to take more of management, middle management positions, and they just call them like sales manager, product manager, a relationship manager. And so it's one of these positions that certainly includes that, but it's not as explicit as
Head of customer support for the government.
Yeah, exactly.
So I pulled up the resumes myself, and Cohen wasn't kidding. Like, look at this person here. Just a few weeks before the inauguration, she was promoted to Senior Vice President of Global Government Relations. And guess what her last job was? Deputy Chief of Staff to House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer. It's the same story with David Ryder, a decade enforcing export controls for Uncle Sam, then straight to Honeywell's business development team. In fact, data from Open Secrets shows the pattern. 35 out of 57 Honeywell International lobbyists in 2024 once held government jobs. But again, I'm not just picking on Honeywell. Remember Apple? Like, look at this person, Sierra Kelly Chung. She spent years on Capitol Hill, and now she's a senior government affairs representative for Cupertino. But look, this isn't just LinkedIn stalking and generational hate. It's the blueprint of the revolving door. Make donations, jump lines, and hire regulators, and you get endless jobs, waivers, and profits. And I can't blame any of them because it's all perfectly legal. And if I'm gonna be honest, looking at it from a company's perspective, if I'm Honeywell or Apple, why would I not do the same? It's why you have to learn the rules of power, because these things repeat. It's happening now in 2025. While trade war headlines promise jobs back at home, this same playbook is being used. But not only that, it's being repeated everywhere in the world. I'm also curious too, because if US companies are doing this, have you seen anything in your research to suggest Chinese companies doing the same with US officials?
I think that's a great question and a great area to explore further. I would imagine that it happens in other countries too. And in fact, we have some anecdotal evidence presenting the paper that people have said, oh yes, we see similar things with this firm or that firm.
And yes it does. Meet Isaac Stonefish, CEO of Strategy Risk. His team scraped every Foreign Agents Registration Act filing from 2018 to 2025, and the pattern is clear. Chinese state-linked giants from Huawei to ZTE didn't fight tariffs in public. What they did is they hired US law firms packed with ex-members of Congress to lobby the same exclusion desk. And how they found this out was they looked at the spending spikes after new tariff rounds since 2018. Since then, Chinese companies have poured $33 million into lobbying firms like Hogan Lovells and BLJ Worldwide. So remember when I told you about how Apple lobbied for smartphone waivers and they got them? Huawei was also paying $6 million to Sidley Austin to do the same for their smartphones in 2020. But they didn't do it alone. They also brought backup. Since American chip makers also stood to lose millions if they couldn't sell their products to Huawei, American chip makers also quietly lobbied the White House to ease up, and guess what? They got the same break as Apple. The playbook isn't just red, white, and blue. It's global. And when elites everywhere run the same moves, borders don't block influence, they just extend it. And as long as you can stay in the gray zone, it's almost impossible to stop. Because the only real way to solve it is by tearing down the system itself. Because again, the revolving door exists for a reason, and to stop this means stopping three things. First, banning corporate donations in politics. No checks, no favors. Second is banning shadow lobbying, where ex-officials hide as strategic advisors and they ghostwrite waiver pleas for their old buddies. And third is enforcing conflict of interest, where no regulator signs off on a waiver for a past or future employer. Each fix is like a video topic in and of itself, but let's be real. You guys really think any of this will happen? I mean, there's talks of a bill. Representative Chip Roy and Senator John Ossoff want every waiver request and decision posted online. But just like when I talked to Senator Ossoff about his banned Congressional Stock Trading Act, I can't help but think, is this just another bill that makes headlines, but then nothing ever really happens? And so the power rule is simple. Leverage beats hard work. And having access to the most powerful connections is probably the highest leverage you can pull. So we've seen who wins, how they play, and why the game won't probably change. But one question still bothered me. Do you really have to operate in the gray zone to reach the top? Everything that we've looked at so far says yeah, but maybe I just don't want to accept it. But I had to confirm one last time. I had to ask someone who spent their career watching who wins and who loses. Another big kind of ethos of this channel is the importance that, look, I can't change rules. We can't change the system, but I do think it's important to learn the rules of power to be able to apply it to our own lives. What are something viewers and the everyday person can learn from this?
Again, now you ask a great question, and you hit directly into my heart as a professor of innovation and entrepreneurship. So a number of my students, they start their own firms. And oftentimes when you're starting your own firm, you started on a shoestring budget and you are the CEO and the CFO. You wear every hat. And when you start to do that, you're just thinking about staying afloat. And then as you grow a little more, oh my gosh, we're making enough that we can pay our salaries. Now let's think about, maybe we can expand a little bit our customer base. Well, as you grow, many of these companies, they view that the people making rules, either in your town, in your state, as people that they just want to duck and hide from. That like, okay, we'll just abide by these things. Let's just stay away. And it turns out that being close to those policy and regulators, even at an early stage of development, can provide a huge amount of value and will provide even more value in the future.
So here's the hard truth. The fact is, it's delusional to think that you and I can change the system. As long as rules exist, the gray zone will too. No matter what the rules are, insiders will always find that gap. And I think it's why they say that life ain't fair. As we're seeing right now in 2025, the game is changing constantly, but the rules of power never do. And it's exactly why the most important rule is that those who adapt win and those who resist lose. And as someone who's desperately chasing success myself, it's harsh, but I think it's reality. I don't think they'd admit it, but if we ask any of these guys, I'm sure they're very familiar with the gray zone. Maybe I am delusional enough to believe that you can still win without playing in the gray zone. Or maybe this whole staying honest to your values is for losers. But in all seriousness, if you want to get smarter about money and power, I can help you for free. Check out my free newsletter, The Money Trails, where I write about the power behind today's issues in business, politics, and culture. Or you can watch this video on how trade wars was never about trade.